Welcome back to Black Girl Couch Reviews. I'm your host, Christina. We are back for another recap and review of The Haunting of Hill House, Season 1, Episode 7, Eulogy. Now, the last episode I did, I think I said it was 7. Actually, I was one too many. So that was episode 6, 2 storms. This is episode 7. I have 3 more to go, not 2. So you can still get your feedback in for episode 8, 9, and 10, which I will be tackling next week. So this episode was directed by Mike Flanagan, and it was written by Charisse Castro Smith, who did work on The Exorcist, The Good Wife, and Unforgettable. I gave this one a 7.4 out of 10. It wasn't the strongest of the 7 episodes thus far. Everything's kind of kept me on the edge of my seat thus far with this series, and this one was kind of a step back in regards to the suspense and the action around the series. However, I still really liked it. I'm just not as interested in some of the storylines, in particular kind of some of the backstory. It was interesting, but it moves slower than it usually does, and that's just something I'm not used to. Again, I think it was a good episode. It just wasn't as great as its predecessors. Just quickly, some news and gossip. Luke Perry has died. He had a massive stroke, and he has passed away at the age of 52. So RIP to him. I know I made a really now it seems tasteless joke the other day about when he first went into the hospital, about 90210. Of course, if he's in spirit, he knows that was just a joke. I love Luke Perry, so I was genuinely devastated to hear this morning that he had passed away. So that's all I even felt like talking about. I mean, I've kind of been in my feels all day and watching old gift sets, and I even forgot he was in Buffy, and I just talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and how much I love that movie. So definitely a loss for us, and I don't know what this means going forward to the show that they were going to do. However, this is just sad. I don't know, it was just really unexpected, really sad, and it kind of bummed me out the rest of the day. And then the only other news that of note is that Haunting of Hill House, I think, has already been out there that it's renewed for season 2, but it will be coming back in 2020. So we have a whole year to go before we will be seeing any more Haunting of the Hills in the House. So let's go ahead and dive right into this episode. We start off with Hugh in a police station. There's a over-friendly black cop. I was like, really, you the sheriff? That's surprising. And he said it was Massachusetts too. Excuse me if I am a little low tonight. I am actually kind of sick. I've been sick for the last few days, and I'm trying to get over it, and I hate just, not, because I didn't record anything this weekend, and I felt terrible, because I've really been trying to work on that schedule, guys, but I don't know what's come over me. I've been feeling my stomach's just terrible, so if I don't sound like my normal upbeat self, I'm sorry. But I definitely wanted to get, some of these episodes out because I really hate missing my deadlines. So, again, back to this over-friendly black cop who's telling him, you want some cream and sugar, because apparently he forgot that. And Hugh was kind of like, I don't need that. That's not necessary. And he's definitely just trying to keep him there. He says that, how's the clothes? You couldn't wear yours because they're out testing for blood. And he's trying to seem like he's not being intimidating and getting up in this dude's grill because, his wife's dead. And he packed his kids up in the middle of the night. And there's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. And Hugh begins to start backpedaling on what he told the officers about the house being haunted, is my guess. because he finally, in a moment of clarity, realized how that shit sound. But of course, this sheriff has already been informed of what he said, and he wants to know what he said about the house being haunted, and that he already sent officers to talk to the Dudleys. And he tells them, you know, I have to tell you, your wife's down at the corner and it's a mess, Hugh. It's a mess. And then he mentions the other body, and I was like, the fuck? When do we see another body? Which we found this episode. I don't know why he was asking him about that body, though. He's the one that found it, right? So why is he asking him about the body? As if he's the one that put that man in there, who obviously died quite some time ago. I just don't know how my dude was going to be responsible for that. The officer is basically compelling him to stay, saying, you know, you can stay, talk, and if you leave and lawyer up, that's not going to look good. And I'm like, Hugh, it already looks bad. Lawyer the fuck up. You're covered in your wife's blood. Apparently, we find out he waited 3 hours to call the police. It don't look good. So, yeah, I would have called my attorney, but Hugh stays put. And he says, well, that's good, because I'm going to go get your cream and sugar in this coffee, despite Hugh very adamantly saying, I don't want it. He gets up, looks at himself in the mirror, wondering how his life basically got to this point. In the present, Hugh is is choosing ties with Olivia. We don't know it's her, but we all can guess who he's been speaking to this entire time. Now, I'm glad I took a moment to pause after the episode and take a shower, because right in the shower, it occurred to me at the end of this episode that he actually may not be seeing real life or dead Olivia. I think this is his coping mechanism, and we'll get more on that later of why I think that, because there were a few scenes that didn't make sense, but thinking about it in hindsight, it actually makes a lot more sense with his conversation with Luke at the end. But he finds a tie, and then the next scene, he's in Shirley's kitchen, and she's yelling on the phone about some calla lilies, I don't know, some flowers. She is really cursing out this chick about how she better have these damn flowers here, or she's never gonna have business with her again. Rachel was her name, I think. And one of the kids is like, you're our granddad, how come I never met you before, stranger? And he says, well, I met Jaden before when he was really young, and Jaden's like, I don't remember that shit. And she's like, I don't care about him, I'm talking about me, why don't I know you? And then Dad Kevin comes in the back. He looks like he has not slept. He's in his clothes from the previous night. And Jaden's like, where you been at? You missed breakfast. Poor Kevin. I don't know what the hell happened with Kevin and Theo. And I hope it's more to the story than what the hell I saw, because I feel like I'm missing something. Shirley comes in and just looks at him with the eyes of death and tells him that my husband's about to be there to pick up them flowers, so you better have them or you'll never get my business again. And he's like, well, that's fine, can we talk? No, you're busy getting flowers. Can I shower? Absolutely. I mean, she don't even say anything. She looks at him and he leaves. And I'm like, dang girl, you ain't gonna let him shower? He was playing waiter to your family yesterday. I don't know what happened. And I'm going to say that a lot this episode because I honestly don't know. She sends the kids away at least before she starts bossing his ass around. And Hugh is looking between them like, I don't understand. And just as Kevin leaves, he decides to start talking to her about how Kevin was at the hotel picking at the free breakfast. I don't know what's going on. Which is kind of like, if you don't know what's going on, then what the hell are you putting your 2 cents in it? But he tells Shirley that he thinks it's about the book money though, right? And he says that he did what he did for the business, you brat. And she tells him that, why is my phone going off? It is way too late to be getting text messages. She tells him to go lecture Theo. I ain't got no time for this mess. By the way, we're not even open. Get your ass out. She loved kicking people out of her house. Dang, find another way to cope, girl. And you hear Olivia say, wonder where, or maybe the dad says that. He says, wonder where she gets that from. Yeah, and Olivia's like, basically, I wasn't that kind of a bitch. And she says Shirley needs Shirley space, which is basically Shirley is a whirlwind unto herself. And when she's in this mood, just don't mess with her. And she tells her, Olivia, that is, he tells Hugh to go ahead and just bear with her, especially today. And he says, what a mess. And that is when we get a transition back to the day after the storm, in which Hugh and Mr. Dudley are inspecting the damage. And Steve was there too. And the Dudleys were talking about how the storm missed them and all they got was rain. And he's like, well, it's a 10-minute walk away, right? And he's saying out loud how it didn't hit the whole property. He thinks that it's a microblast because it only hit the house. And I'm like, are you not putting the math together? I don't know. This whole exposition of it only hit their house, it was so, I don't know, it was very poorly written is all I can say. It did not translate well at all. And all I kept thinking is, what kind of stupid are you, Hugh, that I've ever heard someone rationalize so hard, you know, the reason for why their house was the only one hit by not only a rainstorm, but a hailstorm and a thunderstorm. But no one else in the neighborhood, even the person that was 10 minutes away, felt or got any impact from that. That is when Steve finds a wall that's squishy and he says, oh no, I didn't know what the hell that meant, but apparently that means that you have water damage, and they are marking X where the walls are squishy. And Hugh remarks that there's just no way in hell that the rain did all of this. And Mr. Dudley concludes that, yeah, I don't think so either. He thinks it's a busted pipe. And he says, well, that doesn't sound plausible, but if it is, it's okay. I can fix it. That's his whole thing during this whole episode, is that Dad's the fixer, apparently. Steve wonders what the hell the smell is, and as they go downstairs to the basement, and the dad says ruin, Mr. Dudley says mold, and the dad's like, same thing. I was laughing my ass off because he was like, this is the worst. And I realized at that point, oh yeah, they're trying to sell the place mold, especially black mold that's, I guess, water is pulling all the way 3 floors down, is really bad. And Mr. Dudley says to apparently everybody that knows that's really bad. Duh. Dad is really not taking this well, and he really wants to say motherfucker, but he stops himself and says father, mother, or something like that. And Steve's like, really, Dad? And I'm like, honestly, just say it. They start to hammer into the wall, and as soon as Mr. Dudley smells into the hole, he says, yep. And I'm like, this guy. They take a picture of inside the wall, I guess, to try to take a look at the mold, the black mold that is. And he tells Steve, Hugh that is, that he needs to go upstairs because it's not good for him to breathe in that type of air or that type of mold. And I'm like, it's not good for y'all either. And they start to hear shit in the hole, and they immediately think rats. I understand why they would think that, but I think it's funny that Mr. Dudley's the one that says it's rats. But I was like, they really, that I was just like the plumber guy. They can't chew through the pipes, because that's exactly what Dudley says. Maybe they chew through the pipes. I'm like, they're like fucking, their teeth ain't that damn freaking strong. They're made of ivory or some shit. And I wrote in my notes, I can hang myself with how much yarn they are weaving right now. Everything they had a reason for. It's like, oh, it's this, it's that. No, it's just the house is fucked up. Let's find another place. But I guess when all of your money is into one place and you got like 6 fucking kids. Did Hugh just see a face in that picture and then just very casually go back to studying the pipes?
Dumbass motherfucker.
He a little stuck on stupid. I don't... For someone who is so woke right now, it took him a while to wake up. He is very fixated on the fact that this is going to ruin them, and starts finally losing his shit because he starts banging the shit out of that wall. He is angry. Then we go back to the present, in which Hugh is knocking on Theo's door like, Shirley kicked me out. Theo is like, oh, I'm sure she's in the mood. And he asks to come in, and they are enjoying coffee. And that's when the dad remembers that Luke used to actually live with Shirley. Honestly, living with her would make me want to get high. I don't know how that arrangement worked out, but yeah. That would be terrible. She's the worst. I don't hate her. I just said she's the worst, and then I said I don't hate her. She's hard to empathize with. Let's just say that. Hugh remarks that Luke actually looks good, that he's clean, that he's proud of him, and by the way, you look like trash. No judgment though, I woke up looking like you a few times myself. And she says, Dad, I really fucked up. She says, even by the Crane standards, I fucked up. And I was like, oh my God, did I misjudge this? Have I taken the side of Theo just because I don't like Shirley? And she really did have like hate sex with Kevin? I still can't see it, but it's what the show is trying to indicate. I still think it's something else. I totally think it's something else. But she apologizes and said she should have made more of an effort with him, and that she should have at least met him halfway. But you don't realize until you fuck up so royally that people fuck up, and you need to forgive them. And he asks, is this about the money? And she's like, it's not about the money. And all I can think is, shame. I don't want to feel that way about Theo. That's like my favorite character. She tells him to stay. She's going to go take a shower. And I owe Shirley an apologize if they totally banged. I still don't think so. I don't know. Because I honestly think if my husband and my sister banged, I don't know if I would be letting them in my house at the funeral. I feel like, I don't know. That wasn't her reaction. It was, I don't know. Shirley's weird though. She takes betrayal hard. But Olivia is like, well, that was unexpected to him in the kitchen. And she lets him know he was always good at accessing the damage. And we get another flashback in which Hugh is showing Olivia where all the mold is, and he's still in we're gonna lose our shirts. And she completely ignores that announcement and talks about how the floor plans are schizophrenic and she can't figure it out. And he goes back to, in a couple of months they will be stuck here. And she's trying to tell him not to panic because she's going to go over the blueprints, make one master blueprint so they can fully assess how fucked up they actually are to start fixing the situation. I called him the plumber, but I guess I don't know what kind of guy he is, but I'm going to call him the plumber. He is like assessing the damage to Dad and telling him, I didn't find any leaks, but there definitely is moisture spreading. You need to find out where it's starting from. He tells him what he needs to do as far as like the fans or whatever. He says that they've checked every room but one, and I was like, that's the red room. Hugh that is, asks about the rats, and he's like, what the fuck are you talking about some rats? I ain't seen no droppings, I ain't seen no rats, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, could the rats have went through the pipes? And he's like, it'd have to be a shit ton of rats. And I'm like, right? And he says that they need to do all these instructions, and he's like, oh, my budget's kind of tight, just give me the fans, or let me rent the fans. And he's like, well, that's a big job for just you. And he's like, I got help. And he points to Steve out in the Steve all up in the corner, and he totally throwing shade at the fact that he is doing fan rentals and child labor. In the present, at the funeral, Steve and Lee are talking in the corner. I don't see what's going on in this relationship, and I honestly don't care. I don't even know Lee, but I'm not invested in this at all. I don't see any chemistry between them either. He's clearly trying to explain something she don't want to hear, and she runs off. The dad is watching all of this go down and thinking that he wished that his kids had better role models and a better marriage to have on their basis of what a good marriage is supposed to be. And she's like, don't be like that. Olivia, that is. She's like, we were solid until the last few days. That don't count. That wasn't us. And I'm like, but to them, they totally think it was. And you haven't said shit since. Hugh checks in on Lee and asks how she's doing. She's like, oh no, how are you doing? They hug, and Steve's scowling on. And then he goes to check on Luke and congratulates him on his 90 days of sobriety. Olivia tells Hugh to just sit, not talk, because Hugh doesn't want, or Hugh feels, or not Hugh, but Luke feels like he wants the day to be about Nell and doesn't want people to be focused on him. Theo comes in, and why, Kevin, you got to give her that look of shame? Jesus. Hugh puts the pieces together as he's looking between the two. Luke tells him about Theo being gay. Wait, that was after, because as she's looking like trash standing next to Luke, he's like, get beer and tomato juice is the best for hangovers. And I'm like, what about cardinal sins? And she asks, does it work? And he says, not like a shot of smack. And she says the best remedy for a hangover is heroin, if I got that straight. And with no hesitation, he's like, by a mile. Hugh's face this entire conversation is hilarious. It's the funniest scene, I think, this episode. Theo's female stalker shows up at the funeral, and I'm just like Theo. Are you fucking kidding me? She said she found the obit. Who searches obituaries? And she's like, why didn't you tell me? I just wanted to support you, girl. This is a 2-day hookup. No, you just don't crash some. Why? And then why was Theo apologizing? Like, oh, I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry. You are right. You are entitled to your life, and you're not entitled to give it all up to this girl you just met this week. And Theo's like, fuck my day, and runs off. And then the dad and Luke exchange awkward haze, and she even goes into the room. I'm like, oh my God, girl. Hugh is like, that's when Luke starts to say about Nell cracking up about finding out Theo was gay at the wedding. And he's like, oh no, we knew. We've been knew since she was 8. Your mom called it. And then here comes this knock on the door, and this elderly lady comes in. And I'm guessing that's Aunt Janet, by the way Luke so eagerly gets up and joins her and hugs her. But Hugh and Janet clearly don't like each other because they greet each other by first name. She's like, Hugh. He's like, Janet. They beefing. For real. But she's like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to us. To anybody. She clearly is trying to throw shade, but not throw shade because it's a sad situation. And we get another flashback. They hear what Hugh assumes is rats. Hugh and my dude Steve, And that's when he says he's gonna go get some rat poison to take care of the motherfuckers. That is when Mom comes down and she gives Dad the blueprints, like, I got a special present for you. And he looked at them blueprints awfully concerned, and we know why later. Back at the funeral, Shirley reads a poem that she felt the need to reference, but it's TV. Any other time though, you would not be referencing who wrote the damn poem. Luke comes up to speak when she asks if anyone wants to say a few words, and he talks about being 90 seconds older than Nell and how he always used to kind of lord that over her and she would let him get away with it. And did y'all check that grandma that was sitting behind Steve? She totally looked like the grandma from the bed, and I don't mean like she was there for the haunting. I mean, that was the actress just in another scene. And he tells everyone when Nell dropped him off at rehab, she said, go in there and bring me my brother back. He failed to mention the fact that he sent her to buy him some heroin and shot up in her car. But he ends it with, she was always, I was born 90 seconds before her, but she was always my big sister. We get another flashback where Hugh is talking with Mr. Dudley, and he tells him, look, bro, you need to find the key to the red room because I'm running out of places to look for this leak, and that's the only one I haven't checked. He's like, these blueprints are a hot ass mess. Mr. Dudley's looking at him too, like, did the missus do that? And he tells Hugh, like, I know it's not my place, but Olivia needs to get the fuck away from this house. He was like, you're right, it's not your place. But them blueprints do spell batshit crazy, so you need to talk to this man. Then Mr. Dudley, out of no fucking where, has a straight up monologue. Right? They put the camera on him and everything. They gave him his 5 minutes in the sun. He came with the emotions though. He says that his mom used to work in the house and that he was actually born at Hill House. So we're finally getting some stories, so I was appreciative of all this tea. I was sitting back with Hugh. I was like, let me get my tea and crackers. I need to lap this up. He says that he actually grew up in the cottage at the edge of the property and that he bought it when he grew up. He says that his mom would get scattered though when she came back from working at the house. And when I say scattered, I mean she would go out at night in the woods, wandering around, talking to her damn self, giggling, whispering to someone like it's a suitor and like she's a lovesick girl. And sometimes she would even sleep out up in the coat. And he says that he met Claire, he fell in love. That's Mrs. Dudley, I believe. And he said that they got married on the property when Hazel was sick. So that's Mrs. Hill, right? And Claire actually worked for Mrs. Hill even though she got pregnant, right? She never complained. Mrs. Hill worked her to the bone, and their baby girl was stillborn. And Dad's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But he's like, look, I'm trying to drop you knowledge. I ain't got time for all that. He says, it's weird though, because he says at first, right? He's like, she didn't even get to, and he wanted to say, make her first cry. And he's weirded out because Claire went back to work a month later, but had these really bad nightmares, so bad that he would find her seasoned and crawling in a corner. And the dad's like, Jesus. But before Hazel passed, she came home crying one day at night, screaming, saying that she heard the baby and that she ran through the woods with no light, came home with the branches, scratches all over her. And so one night he decided to go with her to the house, and he be damned, he heard the cry of their child, and he just knew it was their child. He knew 100% that was their child, and it was the cry that she never took. And after that moment, they don't come to the house at night. They're like, nope, First they thought it was superstitious just not to come to the house at night. But then they realized, no, that shit worked. And they stuck to it because Mrs. Dudley no longer had nightmares. I'm guessing they never got over the trauma of their baby. Aww. And that makes so much sense about this house. I wonder what Mrs. Hill know about Mrs. Dudley, or backwards, what Mrs. Dudley knows about Mrs. Hill, because she don't seem like she may have been a good person. And does this mean that the house just like attracts ghosts? Like once you die on the property, you become part of the property, like Pet Cemetery or some shit, but like a weird different version of that. Anyway, he tells him, so yeah, it's not my place, but you need to, if your wife basically start getting scattered, you need to get the hell away from this house. And he says, you also need to say a prayer. And he's like, well, prayer's not our thing. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. Did you not hear what he just said? And after last night, this should be hitting home to you in all of the right places. But he does go upstairs to confirm why the blueprints have been looking so familiar to him, and we find that out a little bit later when he actually does finally confront homegirl. Back today in the present, Shirley is avoiding riding with Kevin and Theo to the cemetery and ends up with Dad because he's like, oh, you need a ride? I love when she's like, no, everything's about you, Steve, because he totally thought she was not getting in the car because she's still mad about the book. And I was like, well, that's what she's been bitching about for the last 15 to 20 years or whatever. She is riding with Dad, and Dad decides that he needs to get all up in her business. I don't know why, because Mom's totally like, stop, don't do it. Stop making this chit chat that's unnecessary about the service. But then he gets to the point about Theo and tells her that, you know, you guys need each other after you heard what Luke said. And Mom's still like, don't, because she's like, do you even know what Theo did? Because he's like, I talked to Theo this morning. And she tells him to stay the fuck out of his business. And he's like, yep, stuck my hand right in the fan of it. And that's when we get another flashback of Hugh and Steve working together in the basement like father and son should be. And he tells him that the fan is busted because the mold guy sold him a busted fan because he didn't let him finish the job. And he tells him to unplug it because he needs to fix it. Just as he's unplugging because we clearly see Steve unplug the fan. He sees that face imprint that he completely ignored on the wall, and his fucking hand gets sliced the hell up. I was like, dang, ouch. And he says fuck, and there's the expletive. He says fuck one time and he can't stop saying that the rest of this episode. Steve, that is, swears that he unplugged it. Dad is very passively aggressively calling him a liar this entire time. He's like, you can just go upstairs now and go play. He's like, I swear. He's like, I just want to help. He's like, you've helped. And then the next scene, we see him with a gauze. Nah, my dude, that shit needed stitches and ER medical attention. There's no way you just put that up in some gauze. Dad has some tools with him, and he is determined that he is about to break down this red room, but to no avail. It does not happen, and he drops more F-bombs like no tomorrow. Back at the funeral, they are not at the cemetery. They're throwing dirt on her casket. Janet totally calls Nellie her little girl, and Olivia points out to Hugh that she did raise her, and he's like, still. And she don't know what she's saying, maybe, but she's in the moment. But I can see how he might be offended of that. Like, hey, you know, she had a mother that did love her. Big Neck Nell shows up. Big Neck Nell. She shows up when Luke is putting dirt on and says, don't. And just then, dead Olivia starts grabbing at Luke. And this is when I realized that he must be seeing Olivia as a coping mechanism, because why would dead Olivia appear to Luke? However, Liv has been talking to, if she were a ghost, that is, she's been talking to the dad. And he heard what happened. So, I don't know. I feel like this is just him with her in his head. And this is his thoughts. And that really hit home in the scene where he had with Luke, when we get to that. Steve comes over and saves him from massive embarrassment and tells him, you know, get your shit together. He's like, look, I know you seeing dead people. It's cool. We see things. Hell, even I've seen things this week. It's not real. We got to keep telling ourselves that, because it's our genes. We got the crazy in our genes. It's a sickness. Stop talking crazy, because I do not want to bury you too. And I'm like, damn, Steve is taking a whole dark turn. He totally thinks that the whole entire family is just cursed. And Hugh was casually watching this conversation but doesn't interrupt. And that's what, oh yeah, that's when he says, I don't want to bury you too. That was so sad. And Hugh casually tells Luke, are you okay? He's like, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm not about to tell you what happened because I know you be propping me up. We get another flashback of Hugh waking up with Liv straddling him with a screwdriver to his neck. And he's like, Liv, what the fuck? She's like, I was having a really bad dream. He's like, you think? And he asks, what's going on with you? Something is happening and you have a screwdriver to my fucking neck. And she's like, no, I didn't. Or no, I wasn't. And I was like, what are you talking about? Somewhere, you know, Mr. Dudley is admonishing Hugh. Like,
I told you that bitch crazy.
And finally, Hugh's like, okay, we gotta talk. And he shows her that she's been crazy with these blueprints, and he figured out that she has literally just made the forever house again and again and again. And she's in denial, like, no, I didn't do that. Girl. She goes, that's absurd. Girl. The proof is in the pudding. But she, of course, is just feeling, though she don't want to be called crazy. She agrees to go to Aunt Janet's for a couple of days. She thinks that might be a good idea. But she's like, what about you? He's like, oh, I can handle it for a few days. One person and how many? 5 kids? 4 kids? Whatever many kids? No, 5 kids. No, sir. You cannot handle that by yourself. She thinks that she has underestimated her migraines. That's not your migraines. Why does no one go get help? See a doctor. I know if things are not going right with me, I seek medical attention. Whether that be psychological or physical. But she says it just snuck up on her and she's not crazy. He's like, oh no, absolutely not. You're totally not crazy. At the funeral, after the funeral, is this the wake time? I don't never know what to call them, but everyone is hugging Shirley. Hugh is watching her. Theo is chatting up the stalker girlfriend like she ain't did what she did. I don't know what she did, but she's casual. Liv tells him, you need to just finish your drink, say your goodbyes, and see them in another few years if you want. And I'm like, damn, what kind of advice is that? And then she says, oh, you don't want to see them not for a few years. You want to actually connect with your kids again. He sees Luke up to no good and approaches him and it's like, oh, so I totally overheard your conversation with Steve and you're not alone. It's fine. We see dead people. It's, I see your mom. My therapist said that it's a coping mechanism and it's perfectly natural and fine. But sometimes, it's just not a coping mechanism. It is really dead people. And I'm like, leave this boy alone. He is absolutely and utterly just out of rehab. He don't need this shit right now to be validated. No, I think he just needs to be, I don't know, not this. And he calls him on it a little bit like, oh, dad, remember, because he told him when he was younger, like, shit ain't real. And now all of a sudden he's trying to say, oh, no, it's real. It's totally real. And he says, I'm glad you're here, dad, and leaves. And we see Shirley's purse clearly rifled through, and I was like, this damn boy and stole something from Shirley. Still in the flashback at this damn wall, Hugh starts going at it with a hammer. He's got his rat poison. He's pissed. He's like, I'm gonna get you fuckers now. Then he looks in the hole of the wall and shouts and falls back. And I'm like, holy shit, it's a body. And I'm glad that they called the police, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, you better have called the police. No way in hell. The mom is there. She's like, I'm not going to let the kids come down and see this. But the officer that's interrogating him after the mom dies is like, you solved a cold case. That's William Hill. He went missing in 48. The Mrs. Hill looked everywhere for him, or had police look everywhere for him. And they wonder how he died, and he said it looked like he bricked himself up in there. But then the marks on the bricks indicate that he wanted to claw his ass out and must have changed his mind, because why not? I don't think he bricked himself up in there, obviously. Why would you brick yourself up and change your mind? That sounds like a whole lot of... No, that sounds like someone did that to you. Oh my God, why didn't anyone think... And they're gonna talk about he had the tools in his hand. Did we not know in the 20th century what, setting up someone for a crime looks like? She totally killed that man. Anyways, the officer points out in Massachusetts that they don't have to let potential buyers know that there was a death on the premises. Nice job. Being trash. And then he asks, hey, the town folks be talking, is this place haunted? And dude's like, yeah, or at least my kids think so. Back in the present, Hugh is taking his happy pills and drinking. That's not good. He's saying goodbye to Steve. He tells him, my flight's early. I'll be at the hotel. He offers to get a drink with him later, but Steve demurs, like, oh, I got an early flight as well. And he stops him like he wants to tell him something. And Steve's like, what? And it's Olivia who has to say, I'm sorry I didn't talk. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I wasn't there. It's the regret of my life. I'm sorry I couldn't fix it. Of course, he doesn't say any of that. He just says safe flight, gives him a hug, and that's apparently how they're going to end their bombshell about Steve totally wanting his dad to be dead. Shirley realizes that her credit card is gone, and Theo comes in like, did you tow my car? And she's like, Theodora, the place's business is closed now, so get the fuck out. And she's like, sorry, but my car is missing, and I don't know where it is. And Shirley's like, well, my whole damn wallet is missing. And Liv's looking at Hugh like, you saw it. You knew what went down. You didn't want to believe it, but you let it happen. And Dad finally speaks up and says, yeah, Luke totally was over here and did it. After they figure it out, Theo is like, what's that? Because Shirley's like, fuck. Because she's got to pay the caterer. Which Steve will take care of, but she's mostly like, fuck, he stole my whole damn shit. You should have locked up that purse, girl. You knew what was up. You had a whole conversation. That's what you get when you're focusing on other stuff. Theo follows the dirt with Dad on the floor, and they go into Shirley's office, and her forever house is completely destroyed, and she's totally mad about it. Or not mad, she's sad about it, because she's like, oh no, she's gonna kill someone when she sees that. Shirley, that is. And then both Theo and Hugh they start to hear a noise, and they look over, and was that Mom? That was totally Mom, right? Dead Mom is chasing them, crawling after them, and Theo screams, and she's like, make it stop, because Dad yanks Theo up real quick. Like, run away, not run and stare. Shirley comes around the corner like, what the hell is happening? Then she looks at Forever House destroyed, and Dad mutters out like, oh, it totally happened before we even got here, but I could fix it. I could totally fix it. And we go back to the station that night, or the next night, and we realize this dude has 3 unaccounted hours for Because the cop is like, look, I want to understand. I want to be on your side about this. But you waited 3 hours to call us. So what did you do? He says, I was in shock and grieving. And I'm like, yeah, no one's going to believe that. Not for 3 hours they are. And he points out that, hey, we talked to Shirley and apparently your wife was supposed to have been gone. And he says, yeah, I thought she had left to go see their Aunt Janet. And Aunt Janet's like, no, she never called her about coming to visit. And he's like, well, like I said, I thought she had left. I didn't know she was in the house. And he said, Shirley told you that mom was in the kitchen and that it was weird and that you ran up to the red room. What did you see in the red room? And he tells the officer that room has been locked since they've moved in and he saw nothing. However, we see that the red room door is finally open and he does go inside. So what does this man see? I don't know. I'm kind of scared to see my damn self. But apparently she did something to these kids of hers and she never wanted them to grow up. And that's something that apparently is infecting Olivia with her children. And I think that's why they're so cursed right now. I don't know. It's just really sad, really depressing. And I really want to know what happened. I need more of the Mrs. Dudleys to come out and drop some more hints on this story about Mrs. Hill, because it's got to start with her, right? And if there's a season 2 here at this house, it doesn't necessarily have to be with the same cast, right? And if this house is collecting dead people, as we see there's more stories or hauntings that's happened here, then we definitely can start making this more of an anthology series like Murder House. Ooh, I loved Murder House. That was my favorite of the American horror stories. So if you again want to send feedback, you can send that to blackgirlcouch@gmail.com. You can find this podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify at Black Girl Couch Reviews. Tweet, like, subscribe, follow, all that great stuff. Love hearing from you guys. Love when you do likes. I appreciate that so much on Tumblr as well as on Twitter. It's been real. It's also late as hell. So tomorrow, The Expanse. Peace.